Hello everyone, my name is Sam, also known as fwwwwwibib, and in this video we are recording one of my matches from the USTA 2021 Tak Open. I'm up against Nitzel, who is a pretty strong player, so this should be a good challenge. Just check that he is ready to go. And you can see I am white first rather, and just check that we're ready to start. We're playing with a 2 Komi, which as you can see there, it adds 2 to black's flat count should the game end without a road. So as white, I'm going to need to potentially play a little bit more aggressively, or just make sure that I am a decent amount ahead on flats when it comes to the end game. Now I'm going to start with the knight's opening. I've been liking this as opposed to the sort of more conventional adjacent corner to center start, and let's see how this develops. Okay, that's an interesting... I think the reason Nitzel has gone for f3, usually the most common place for an opponent to play, at least as far as I've been seeing it, would be to kind of just mirror my opening to begin with onto d3. I think he's probably wanting to leave a spot for his cap on d3. So instead I'm going to take that spot. I wouldn't be surprised to see a capstone now on e2 to look to try and get in amongst this stuff. The part of the reason I like the knight's move opening, as expected, is that it does force the any kind of counterplay with either the capstone or other pieces from black to be just closer to the edge, a little bit further away from kind of controlling the center of the board. So this capstone is obviously going to be in a good spot to disrupt anything that we're doing between these 3 pieces. So I'm now going to start building more horizontally rather than the initial vertical line. My other option would be to potentially capture over onto f3, try and isolate the black capstone. I don't hate that idea, but I think it's probably a little bit riskier than it needs to be. So let's go for c4, extending kind of my influence in the center here. And also, like I said, potentially building towards something going left to right along 3 and 4. And there is still the potential to connect up to f6. I'm going to want to get my capstone down relatively soon, because the longer it sort of stays out of the game, the less... or the more chance there is that I'll fall behind. But I don't see a spot just yet where I really want to go. So let's just carry on with this center area. And now I can either play something like e5 to get this... look to make this connection up here, or I can start working down the C file, which has the benefit of being a bit further away from the black capstone. So yeah, I think I like that for now. I am going to have to watch out for Nitzel making his own threat kind of up D and E. So let's grab a spot on the top there while we can, along the 6th row. So again, still expect this black cap to come up onto e3 at some point, and it is now getting more towards a position where I'm actually, I think capturing onto f3 is looking a bit more promising for me, potentially. Yeah, I like this, especially if and if I play here, I expect nitzel to fill back in on e3. If he doesn't, I can drop my cap down there, which I think would be very good for me. But I expect him to fill in behind. The danger, I guess, or the question is, who's got the tempo currently? Who's closer to making a threat? It is just me still. So I think I'm going to wait on that capture onto f3 for a little while longer, just so that I can, because that's quite a defensive move, and again, particularly as white with the 2 Comey, I want to kind of try and maintain a tempo advantage if I can. Okay, so that's e6 is going to be looking to capture onto d6, which is not immediately a threat. He could, yeah, no, still can't make a threat straight away next turn, which means that if I play c1, I'm then going to be able to drop my capstone on probably e5. Yeah, let's go for that. Yeah, so as expected, takes d6. So yeah, I'm going to drop my capstone. This is now going to bring nitzel's capstone up onto e3, because I'm now making a threat all the way up here through my capstone. But capturing my capstone over onto d5 is going to, I think, look pretty good for me. I guess the other option for nitzel, yeah, that was definitely the obvious move for him. Let's see, capturing onto d5 is not quite a threat for me, but it's still pretty clearly my best move, I think. Whatever happens next turn, unless nitzel does something strange like throwing his capstone across, or I guess capturing onto c4, I am going to be able to renew my threat, and I'm also now threatening this to take this captive, free the captive on d6. Okay, sure, that's a good solid defensive wall for nitzel. The question now is, do I want to immediately take d6, or do I start building horizontally here? I think, generally speaking, giving your opponent fewer options of what to do is better, and I'm going to want to do this at some point anyway. So let's, yeah, okay, so that just clarifies the board position a little bit. I can now, if/when I want to, throw the capstone down to cover up d4. But for now, so places I'm considering a d2, which again isn't quite a threat, but sort of puts some more pressure on this towards this vertical road. That's relatively easily shut off by the capstone though. I think I want to build horizontally. The question is, do I play b4 or b5 or something like e6 or e5? I think I'm going to go with b4 because this both works horizontally and is potentially looking to build around this side of the wall up B and C, and it's just a little bit more central than b5 would be. Obviously the disadvantage of this is it means that the wall can come up onto c4 and disrupt that connection more easily. But to be honest, Nitzel's a good enough player, and he's got, you know, two of his nobles relatively central in such a way that I think forcing a quick road here is going to be difficult for me. So I'm kind of looking to just build out my influence in the center and keep making threats, but kind of look towards the flat win as kind of at least always keeping that in mind, even if it's not necessarily the primary objective. So interesting to see what Nitzel does here. He's in a... Yeah, okay. So I think it makes sense from his point of view that he wants to... Playing on d5, it prevents me from placing there myself, and also like this kind of horizontal threat is really the only thing he's got going on from an aggressive point of view at the moment. The downside of that for him is it means now if I throw my capstone down to d4, I'm covering up two of his pieces. So in terms of the long-term flat count, that's going to be problematic for him potentially. I'm going to play on b2 again, make another threat, force him to respond. I wouldn't be surprised to see the wall come up onto c4 here. The other option would be something like, I guess, capturing down onto c5, making a threat there. But that's not a particularly... It's not really a long-term defense that's going to do much for him. This is actually, it's a tricky spot, I think, for Nitzel. If it was me, I would be looking to, I think, bring the wall up. And then if, for example, I place onto d2 or c3. Okay, he goes for that one. So now he's made the threat. I'm going to bring the capstone down. The question is whether I want to bring sort of the full throw like this, or if I want to just leave one white flat on d6 and just bring the cap down to here. That's to d5. That's less. Both of them attack threats. This is just going on to d5 is a less positive move in the short term for the flat count for me, but it does create a liability on d5. So, And it also puts my capstone in a position where it can capture onto c5 if I want to. Yeah, I think I'm feeling in a good enough position just now that I can take the slightly more conservative move. And just sort of going back to this position, if I had thrown down onto d4, it feels it's a pretty strong threat insofar as it's kind of almost going around both sides of this wall, but there's just not quite, and it would be close to attenuate if I had a piece on, say, d2. Yeah, so Nitzel's just noticed that this is a threat because e4 can come over onto d4 here. So he's going to have to make some kind of response that, okay, prevents that. Yep. So it comes down onto c4, which also takes those white captives a little bit further away from my capstone, but also creates an extra liability. So pluses and minuses to that move. I am just going to place on d2, make another threat with the same capture from e4. I do need to keep an eye on making sure I don't miss a threat from nitzel. But I want a piece on d2 here anyway. I can now that I've done that, when I bring my capstone down to threaten this stack, it will be attack threat, so he won't be able to move it away necessarily. Okay, bring that capstone across. That definitely makes sense from Nitzel's point of view. That disc is it's a more substantial disruption of what I'm trying to do here. I don't think that I can immediately make another threat from this position. So the question is, what is my best move to kind of just push my advantage, because I'm definitely in a strong position at the moment. Worth noting that I've now got 3 black flats under my capstone. If I capture down, that'll be 4, so I'm getting close to the carry limit, which will, that will reduce the mobility of my cap somewhat. But so the question is, do I capture down immediately? I think no. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play e3 because I don't particularly want Nitzel to be able to play e3. And it kind of is working on this kind of north-south potential threat. It also, well, no, the capstone wasn't going to be able to self-capture onto this wall in this position anyway, because I can just capture onto d4. But that is something, depending on how things play out, that I could see in a few moves Nitzel wanting to do, just to kind of get a hard capstone and make a kind of a threat out of nowhere. Like, for example, if he plays on c5 and then, in whatever way cuts off this north-south potential threat, releasing the pin on his capstone, then creating a hard cap here. Okay, yeah, like I said, c5, looking to potentially create a hard cap, or more to the point, just to sort of make a threat somewhere along this. Again, continuing with this horizontal thing. What I'm going to place e5, just so that whatever nitzel does, the only way that he can make a threat is by making another capture, rather than letting him get the cheap, easy threat through just placing on e5 here. And again, it also links me up, and it's making my own threat, in fact, for placing on e2. So, okay, interesting. Capturing with the flat rather than the capstone. Okay. So now I'm going to bring my capstone down. That cuts this off fairly conclusively. Worth noting that this black flat is threatening e5 for the kind of the throw up to there, so that's worth keeping an eye on. If, for example, nitzel plays d5 and f5, that would be an attack threat and could easily be missed. So yeah, an interesting decision point for nitzel here. I've definitely made it difficult for him to continue sort of threatening a road. Flat count at the moment is 7 for nitzel, 8, 10 for me, so I am ahead on the flat count even with the komi. And nitzel's got a few liabilities, whereas I don't currently have any. But like I said, that's because I've done all my capturing with my capstone, which is not sustainable for the whole game, because I am going to sort of run out at some point. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is nitzel looking for that sneaky throw by placing on d5. So let's say no thank you to that and place f5 so that he can't make that threat. And this is also a spot where if I now capture onto c4, I can potentially be threatening both north and south, although again, like I said, with the carry limit, I would need to leave a black flat behind if I want to be able to spread up, and I can't currently do that because that would just give nitzel a road. So I wouldn't be surprised to see nitzel play f3 here, because just in order to pin my capstone means that I can't move either north or west with it without creating a space for him to just build a road. Okay, now he's going to continue trying to develop some kind of threat up top here. Do I feel like I need to, like I could put a wall down on c6, for example, and just say sort of a firm no to all of that. So let's see, if I capture, like I said, I can't leave anything behind here if I capture onto c4. It is attack threat if I do it, but only in one direction. And these two nobles are potentially going to be able to cut me off there. And it's still saying, oh dear, I'm not sure if that's in reference to something specific or just feeling like this position is kind of weak for him, which I agree with. Like I said, I do need to bear in mind that a threat may be coming. Nitzel, as I said, is a good player, and he's good enough that I don't think just being super aggressive is going to, I think he'll be able to defend unless I can. So it's going to be difficult to force a Tinue or to get a road that he just doesn't see. So I'm going to play a bit conservative this game. I'm going to chuck a wall here. With the thought that walls are, obviously it's negative flat count for me, or it doesn't add to my flat count at least. But if I bring this wall down onto c5, it's then potentially going to be able to free these captives on c4 more effectively than my capstone can, because capstone is, like I said, limited by the carry limit. Okay, so that does now pin my capstone as well, although once I've done this, it's no longer pinned. And now if I move the wall up onto c4, it is actually a attack threat, because I can, if I then move the wall off, revealing a white flat. Okay, so nitzel sees that and is looking to cut off at b4. Okay, I don't need to capture that just yet. What I'm going to do is, this is definitely looking, with the amount of walls that have been placed already, looking like it's going to go to flats. But I'm going to start working horizontally here. You can see I'm the only one with any pieces on these sort of 1 and 2 ranks. So this is going to be potentially difficult for nitzel to combat, although he does have his capstone and the wall here, which are going to be able to come down and cut off any road threats I'm making. But it is, I'm now basically looking to work through my reserve, bring this game to a conclusion. Flat count is 5, 10, 13 to me, 5, 10 to nitzel. So yeah, my main goal at this stage now is that I don't want to lose to a sneaky threat or a surprise Tinue. So let's just keep playing. If I can here force him to make disadvantageous captures, that's also good for me. And it just lets me continue placing flats, kind of pushing home the advantage. Okay. That's not a threat, but is now looking for, for example, if he captures over, or he again can't currently move his cap because I would just be able to place behind it for the win. I'm looking at e3 plus as a threat because the cap can't come across. But again, I think that's probably more aggressive than I need to be at this stage. Okay, still can't take the wall crush. So I don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to play the wall here. look to definitively cut off this north-south threat and also free this captive. Like, you'll have noticed, I don't think I've made a single capture this game with a flat stone. And I think that's a good way you can avoid it. That is best avoided, because capturing with flat stones, as you can see right now, creates the possibility for your opponent to take back the pieces that you've captured. And like I said, I am here making a threat all the way up this diagonal. I wouldn't be surprised to see Nitzel bring his capstone across here. Yeah, that is something I need to look out for, because it's now his capstone is no longer pinned in the way that it was, and then he's threatening to, potentially crush this wall and cause some problems for me that way. That is the one way that you can release captives under a wall, is by crushing. So again, I'll need to keep an eye out for that. How many I have? 1, 2, 3, 7 stones left in my reserve. So we're still a little ways away from being able to end the game. But yeah, moving in that direction. Okay, it goes for the slightly more straightforward defense of moving the wall up onto c3. I'm going to place just immediately behind on c2, make a threat by, if I take this stack on f1. Okay, yeah, he has seen that. On that previous one, I was threatening to throw this stack up, leave the white flat behind, and the walls moving further up and creating the road across the two rank. But like I said, Nitzel's good enough player to notice those kinds of semi-sneaky threats. So he cuts that off. But again, I can just continue to place. I'm not in any real danger at the moment. So yeah, just looking to finish this off. Okay, I mean, that's fine. That wall is going to make it more difficult for me to threaten a road, but at this point, I'm kind of all about the flats. Pardon me. So I think if I'm Nitzel at this point, he's probably thinking, okay, is there any way that I can build some kind of sneaky threat that the opponent won't notice? Because the game is pretty much gone as far as the flats go. I've got a +3 move by throwing my wall up if I need to, but I'm currently 5, 10, 13 to 10. So I'm still just up on the flat count with the Comey. Once he plays here, it'll be 13 to 11. So, and because I'm in control of when the game ends, I'm going to get to make the last move. Should I want to? Okay. He's going to be looking to place onto c5. Question is, do I preempt that, or do I just say, okay, well, my wall's going to be able to cover that up? I think, yeah, I'll just play. Just double check that's not a threat, and it's not a threat. I'm going to play just on e6, just because if I place on c5, it means that the flat count, the flat count advantage from doing this would have been reduced a little bit. And now with 3 flats left, I've shut off really any hope nitzel had of making a last threat. And yeah, that sounded like the lid of my flat lost grave, nitzel says, which I think is probably fair. This one is pretty much in the books. So let's just play these last few flats quickly. Let's see if nitzel can muster up one final threat anywhere. Yeah, so that's that smash which we anticipated earlier has finally come. Cap's no longer pinned, but because I've only got 2 flats left, I can just allow him to take that, and I'm still going to be far enough ahead on the flats. Let me just double check that. So if he goes, I place here, for example, this isn't a threat from his point of view currently, although it's close. I've got, he will have, once he makes that smash, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and I'll have 6, 9, 13, 14, 15, plus the one I'm placing here. So yeah, I should be fine to just let that happen. Double check that I do only have 2 flats left, yep. And double check that this isn't actually attack threat that I'm missing. No, we're okay. So can do that. Now you get the smash, which would be Tinue for either going this way or no, maybe not quite Tinue. I don't think there's quite enough black pieces in there to spread all the way down. But I can just place my final flat and we get the win, 17 to 12. All right, well, good game. That was an interesting one, and yeah, just a good example, I think, of working that flat count, keeping that in mind the whole way through, and also obviously of forcing your opponent into suboptimal moves by just kind of staying aggressive and making threats. Okay, we'll be back relatively soon for game 2, and we'll see you then. Okay, welcome back for game 2 of this Tak Open match against nitzel. Having won the first game with white, I'm now going to be black. And So yeah, that's going to take a slightly different approach. I need to be a bit more defensive and potentially just try and take advantage of that Komi. So let's go for just adjacent corners. This is pretty standard. And Nitzel's gone with what's probably the most common opening, which is sort of the closest center square to his own piece. So we'll see where we go from here. Personally, as black, I am more comfortable, or I think, generally speaking, tend to end up in a position I feel better about after this. Again, this is the kind of most common, I think, opening that we've seen, and this is, oh, careful, nearly misclicked there. This is my preferred response to it. So let them move forward that far. Chuck the capstone down. Now the question is, I'm going to want to capture this capstone here. It's initially tempting to place a black flat onto B2, but that gives a very juicy spot here on B3 for the white capstone to come down. So I'm not going to do that. I am instead going to just take this capture for now, because that is going to be necessary anyway, and it allows me to start potentially building across this way. Okay, so now that Nitzel has placed it flat on B3, I feel okay about placing my own flat on B2. I think I now have the tempo. I'm in a position where I can make a threat before he can. Looking north-south. It's not going to be a particularly robust threat, but it is a threat nevertheless. I'm not going to go for that. Let's see, if I place here on B1. Yeah, let's go for that. Just thinking about, my other option was to place, for example, C6. But if I do that, the capture up onto B2, although it creates a liability for him, and my initial thought would be, okay, well, I can just place a wall onto B1 or B3 to capture that. The fact that the capstone, Nitzel still hasn't deployed his capstone, makes it, the threat of then crushing that wall is, yeah, potentially bad for me. Anyway, as it has turned out here, I'm now going to, I think, play C6, which is going to allow Nitzel to make a threat if he wants to. But my response is going to be to bring my capstone up onto D2 and make my own threat, or threaten to if he, so for example, if he captures onto, okay, interesting. So he obviously sees what I'm looking to do and is placing his capstone to look to maybe take C4 to prevent that. I think I still want to make the threat anyway. The question is whether placing on A3 or C1 is going to be the more advantageous move for me in the long run. I think this, because it works towards this kind of horizontal threat up here is going to potentially be better. Okay. So now this obviously cuts off my vertical threat. So I'm going to play e2, continue looking to go horizontally. See the white's capstone rather, coming onto c3 here is going to create a pretty strong position for nitzel, but I can again still bring my so again, not quite a threat just yet, but it's still a pretty strong position for white here. Like, I don't feel much further behind as black than I would sort of normally at this stage. It is a threat, actually. Good thing I spotted that just capturing up onto b2. I was so fixated on the capstone here that I almost missed that. So I'm now going to take this capture here, which brings my capstone a little bit further away from the center than would potentially be ideal, but it at least, okay, interesting. So it's not quite a threat, and I think, again, as black with the Comey, needing to be a bit more cautious, I suppose. Like, I can make a threat here just by placing on f2. Black's response to that would probably be to just capture c3. Which is pretty nice looking for him. So I think I'm going to place my first wall here and look to free up this captive. Now, nitzel could... he said that probably wasn't clever at all. It is always the danger with capturing with flat stones, as we mentioned in the previous game. But for example, if he wanted to do something a little bit quirky like that, that does threaten. If I now, A, it's a attack threat, and B, if I now sort of capture up onto this, he can go for the crush. So the question is, A, how do I feel about the potential for that? Or, so do I let him do it? Or do I want to, for example, capture just over onto d1 from c1? And I could capture up with my capstone, but that's putting my capstone right on the edge, and I don't like that. And although this is capturing with a flat, it's somewhat protected by my own capstone. So yeah, let's go for this. I'm also looking at potentially, if I can play on f2, there's the potential for, if, for example, I then move up onto b2, nitzel wouldn't actually then be able to crush, or if he did, I'd be able to throw these two pieces up onto c1. or just place there, depending on what happens. So, but yeah, like I said, this is something to keep an eye on, is that this little stack of two black flats has a little bit more range than it would if it was just one. Okay, and goes for the wall. All right. So I'm not going to be able to crush that wall when it goes on to D1. But that's okay. Yeah, I'm going to just place F2 for now. Now nitzel could make another... Okay. No, he's just looking to push across there. Now I can make a threat by capturing onto D3, or just placing on C4. Obviously this cap can disrupt that. But I think it's worth getting a flat down, making a threat again. As I've said multiple times, forcing your opponent to react to what you're doing is generally a good idea. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see, the wall across. So the question now is, do I want to make this, it's not technically a threat, but sort of the slightly sneaky capture here. I think I want to make the capture here just because either nitzel will make the mistake and crush and then I just win, or even if he doesn't, it allows me to then get away with this wall and get it out of range to be crushed. So let's do that. It'd be interesting to see whether he notices the throw up from or down from C3. And if he does something like just placing on C1 maybe, then I can make a drawbridge threat. Yeah. So let's make the drawbridge threat. I think that's probably worth it. Yeah. And still can't crush. He could do something like bringing the capstone back down onto D3. So yeah, his options to prevent this road are capturing something down here. He could throw the wall across onto B1. or he could bring the capstone with or without that white flat up onto c3. Oh, sorry, I'm just losing my internet connection here apparently. Let's reconnect quickly. Okay, I think we're back. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So he makes his own threat and recaptures that potentially difficult 2 stack. So my options are I either capture over here with my capstone, or I bring the wall across. I think the wall is going to be a slightly better option. I mean, there is always the danger of it getting crushed. But if I move my capstone this way, and then nitzel just places on d2, I'm more than likely going to have to just bring it back at some point. So, and yeah, this makes my own threat. And again, nitzel actually can't crush here, because then I would be able to move the second flat here onto d2 and have a well, actually I wouldn't even need to. It would just be a road up and down b and c. So yeah, it's an interesting position. I mean, nitzel can just place on b4 if he wants to as a sort of first up counter to this threat. There's obviously been a lot of action up here on 1 and 2, and not so much. Okay, so he goes for the wall there, which yeah, stops that pretty conclusively. So the question now is, where do I want to go? I mean, I could make a threat by crushing my own wall, but I don't think that at least at this stage, is going to be good for me. But it's something to bear in mind. So I think I just want to kind of develop some more of my own flats down in this half of the board. Question is where. I think I'm going to go d6, just because that is kind of getting in the way of this north-south road, and it potentially allows me to work towards something horizontal along 5 and 6. It is on the edge, so I could see an argument being made for something like e4, e5, e3 even. But again, similar to the last game, we've ended up with quite a lot of walls on the board relatively early. So it's looking like we're moving in the direction of potentially a flat game. There's plenty of time left for either one of us to make a road. Okay, so an important thing to note about that capture is it unpins nitzel's capstone from being able to crush my wall. Is there a way that I can immediately pin it again? No, I don't think so. But what I can do is capture up here, which gives an extra liability should it be crushed, but he now can't throw all the way up just yet. And even if he does, it is going to be on the edge and therefore potentially less dangerous for me, although it's still looking pretty dangerous. But I think I like that. And now, for example, if nitzel just places on c2 with a flat to block off this threat, I could, for example, just bring my capstone across to fully protect that stack from nitzel's cap. But that would then leave this D file a bit vulnerable. So it's interesting. I wonder what he's going to do here. For example, capturing with his wall onto b2 would allow him to then do that throw again. Okay, now just goes for the flat. I think I'm okay with just leaving that there for now and continuing to develop in the less crowded half of the board. Yeah, I think we're clogged up enough up here for now that I just want to start building a bit more down south. Or, well, because I'm playing as black and the board is inverted, it's we've got 6 at the bottom and the 1 at the top, so depending on which way you look at it, north versus south. But yeah, around 4, 5, 6, I would like to start making some threats, doing some developing so that we can work kind of on pushing towards either a road or a flat win come the late game. Flat count currently is 4, 8, 9 to 10, 11. Okay, I'm decently ahead on flats, but again, I think nitzel's probably a bit closer to creating a road than I am at the moment, so I need to bear that in mind. Keep an eye on that. Worth noting that if nitzel, for example, captures up onto b2 with this wall to allow the cap to potentially run up and crush. My cap coming across to crush b2 is going to be tinue. So hopefully, okay, so it goes for the flat stone capture instead. That's probably a sensible move. It's at least obviously better than the wall capture would have been. So again, this is doing a couple of things. It's looking to A, allow this wall crush, and B, also to build across a horizontal threat. And for me, placing A2 prevents both of those things, or at least it prevents the wall crush, because nitzel would have to leave a black flat on C2, and I could then capture onto B2 from B1 for the road. And it also means that he can't immediately make a threat by placing on A2 himself. But I do want to try and start making my own threats soon. Okay, so that is going to look to, I think, most likely capture onto A2 to make that threat. So the question is, I can't prevent him from making that capture. So I think I'm most likely going to have to capture onto C2 when he does that. Unless, yeah, because that both cuts off the threat and prevents the wall crush. But there's not much more I can do about that just now. So I'm going to play E3 so I can make this sort of long convoluted horizontal threat next turn if I want to. I kind of expect to capture onto E5 here. If not this turn, then either when I make the threat or, yeah, at some point. And if so, I'm going to want to be in a position where I can chuck a wall down to deal with that. Okay, goes for that now. That is a threat. So I can't put the wall down just yet. I can bring my capstone down onto D3. That does allow the wall crush because I'm no longer threatening east-west here. My other options are capturing onto B2, which I don't like because this wall is just guarding. Ooh. Actually, if I capture onto B2, he takes it with the wall. Then the wall crush with my cap. Oh no, I can't wall crush with the cap because he's, by capturing onto b2, making a threat. Okay, I was thinking that was looking close to a Tinue pattern, but it's not. So like I said, I can capture down here, but I don't really want to move my capstone just yet. So I think I'm going to need to capture with one of my flats down here. Question is which one? Let's go with this. I wouldn't be surprised to see a wall on d6 now. But if he does wall on d6, I can place on a5 and prevent that capture from coming up because my capstone can throw itself down onto d4 for the horizontal road. And if he goes for another kind of capture, yeah, then I could have placed my own wall, but instead I go for this. And again, this is a slightly sneaky threat with the capstone, but the kind that I would expect nitzel to see, but you never know. So, like I said, the wall capturing up is not an option. Capturing onto e4 would work. Or, no, that doesn't do it, I'm afraid. That's a shame. It was going to be an interesting finish, but it was a tricky position there. As it happens, I can just capture up onto d4 for the win. There we go. Well played and GG's to nitzel. Kind of unfortunate, he missed the threat there at the end. I think he was too busy looking at the capstone throw to notice that I could just capture up with d4. But yeah, those were a couple of fun and challenging games. Thank you for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the games and maybe learned something. And my plan is to try and record the rest of my games in this tournament. Unfortunately, I did record my match against Encaron in the other match in this round, but had some technical difficulties, so that one was not usable, unfortunately. But yeah, stay tuned for more games coming up. Thanks for watching, and happy tacking. See you next time.